yourself for lies.
Seattle rewards people like me. It celebrates long hours, relentless ambition, and the quiet pride of being indispensable. Here, no one questions why the lights are still on in your office at midnight. They admire it. They nod approvingly when you answer emails during dinner, when you cancel plans because a fire needs putting out. I used to think that was a compliment, that being needed by everyone meant I was doing something right. I built my life on that belief. I'm an executive at a tech firm downtown, tucked into a glass tower that reflects the gray sky back at itself. The kind of place where success is measured by how late your calendar stays full and how often your phone vibrates after hours. I learned early that the people who advanced were the ones who stayed, who raised their hands when everyone else looked at the clock. "Can you take this?" my boss would ask, already knowing the answer. "Of course," I'd say, without hesitation. I told myself that was leadership. Most nights I was still at my desk when the janitorial crew came through, headphones in, wiping down surfaces around me like I was part of the furniture. I'd glance at my phone, see the time, and feel a flicker of guilt, quick, manageable, easy to suppress. I told myself I was doing it for my family, for Laura, for our kids. Every late night, every missed moment had a justification attached to it. When Laura texted, "Are you coming home for dinner?" I'd respond with, "Running late, don't wait up." She'd reply with a simple, "Okay." At first, she used to add a heart. I stopped noticing when that disappeared. I missed school events, birthdays that turned into quick hugs the next morning, conversations that started with, "Can we talk?" and ended with, "Never mind, you're busy." I promised I'd make it up to them, promised weekends, promised vacations that always got postponed. "Temporary," I said. "Just until this project wraps," I told Laura one night as I tightened my tie in the mirror. She leaned against the doorway, arms folded. "You said that last quarter, too." "I know," I said, distracted, checking my phone. "But this one's important." "Necessary," I explained when she asked why I couldn't take a single day off. "It's stability, it's security." She nodded, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not worried about money, David. I just want you here." I kissed her cheek, already halfway out the door. "I am here, just doing what I have to do." Worth it, I believed. I believed that love was patient, that marriage was durable, that as long as I was providing, as long as the future looked bright, the present could take care of itself. I thought effort alone counted as devotion. I didn't realize I was slowly trading presence for progress. And I didn't see the cost, because at the time, Seattle was applauding me for every sacrifice I made. I didn't notice when family dinners stopped being something we planned together and started being something I apologized for missing after the fact. At first, it was the occasional night, an emergency call, a last-minute meeting, a crisis only I could solve. Then it became routine. "Go ahead and eat without me," I'd say into the phone, glancing at my laptop screen. "We can wait," Laura would reply. "I don't know how long this'll take." There would be a pause. Not an argument, just silence. "Okay," she'd finally say. "I'll save you a plate." She always did, even when I got home long after the food had gone cold. I didn't notice when Laura stopped asking what time I'd be home and started assuming I wouldn't be. The questions faded first, then the disappointment. Eventually, even the sighs disappeared. That should have scared me, but it didn't. I mistook quiet acceptance for understanding. Some nights I'd walk in and find her already cleaning the kitchen. "You ate?" I'd ask. "Yes," she'd say without looking at me. "What about the kids?" "They already went upstairs." "Oh," I'd respond, loosening my tie. "I'll check on them in the morning." She would nod, wiping the counter that was already clean. I thought that was harmony. No fighting, no accusations, just everyone adapting. I didn't notice when our conversations became logistical instead of personal. Jake has a game on Thursday. I have a board meeting. Mia needs help with tuition forms. I'll look at them this weekend. Weekend came. Something always came up with it. Once, Laura tried again. "Do you remember when we used to sit at the table and actually talk?" she asked, standing across from me while I scrolled through emails. I smiled, distracted. "We still do." She studied my face. "When?" I didn't have an answer ready. That should have been my second warning. But I told myself love was stable, durable, something you could set down for a while and pick back up when life slowed down. I believed marriage ran on commitment and responsibility more than presence. As long as the bills were filled, the fridge was full, and the future looked secure, the present could be flexible. "We're doing fine," I told her once when she looked especially tired. "This is just a season." She nodded slowly. "I hope so." I heard the words, but not the meaning behind them. I didn't see that what I called neglect, she experienced as abandonment, that every empty chair at the table sent a message I never intended to write. That was my first mistake, believing love could survive on intentions alone. Laura used to look at me like I was going somewhere, and she wanted to come with me. Back then, my plans were our plans. My excitement pulled her in instead of pushing her aside. She'd sit across from me at the kitchen table, chin resting in her palm, listening as if my words mattered simply because they were mine. "You're going to do something big," she used to say. "We are," I'd correct her. She'd smile at that. "Okay, we." Somewhere along the way, she stopped packing for the journey. I didn't notice it at first. I was always in motion, walking through the door while answering emails, nodding at her stories while my eyes stayed glued to a screen. My phone buzzed, and my attention followed it automatically, like muscle memory. "Did you hear what I just said?" she asked me one night. "Yeah," I replied, too quickly. "About your meeting." She studied me. "That wasn't what I was talking about." I looked up then, confused. "Sorry, say it again?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "It's fine. It wasn't important." That phrase, "it's fine," became her punctuation. When she talked, I half listened. When she needed reassurance, I offered logic. If she said she felt disconnected, I explained how busy this phase was. If she said she missed me, I reminded her what we were building. "This isn't forever," I'd say. "You know that." "I know. I just don't know where I fit right now." "You fit in the future," I said once, convinced that was comforting. "Once things settle." She nodded, but her eyes drifted away, like she was already somewhere else. I thought that was maturity, staying focused, not getting pulled into emotional detours. I thought stability meant not reacting to every feeling, not letting sentiment interfere with progress. What I didn't realize was that I was training her to stop reaching for me. She grew quiet, not angry, not dramatic, just absent. She stopped interrupting my work calls, stopped waiting up for me, stopped asking follow-up questions about my day. One evening, I noticed she'd started reading in bed again, something she used to do when she felt alone, long before we were married. "What are you reading?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Just something to pass the time." I climbed into bed beside her, opened my laptop. The glow from the screen filled the space between us. She turned off her lamp. "Good night," she said. It was earlier than usual. I mistook her silence for understanding, for patience, for strength. I told myself she was independent, that she didn't need constant reassurance. It wasn't patience. It was retreat. And by the time I noticed she stopped trying to bring me with her, emotionally, quietly, it was because she was already learning how to walk alone. By the time I noticed she was dressing differently, smiling at her phone and staying late at work, I chalked it up to routine. A new wardrobe, a lighter step, a phone that never left her hand. None of it felt dramatic enough to demand an explanation. "New look?" I asked one morning as she adjusted her jacket in the mirror. She smiled faintly. "Am I not allowed to change?" "Of course you are," I said quickly. "I was just saying." "Well, don't," she replied, already turning away. I let it go. I trusted her. I trusted us. Trust, I believed, was something you didn't question once it had been earned. Questioning it felt accusatory, disloyal, like admitting failure before there was proof. I didn't know she was lonely. Or maybe I did and chose not to see it, because loneliness would have required me to slow down, to show up differently, to acknowledge how absent I'd been. What completely eluded me, however, was that loneliness had curdled into something else: spite. There was now an undercurrent of resentment in her voice, a sharpness that surfaced in small moments. Not enough to start a fight, but enough to leave a mark. "You're home early," she said one evening when I walked into the kitchen. "I finished up faster than expected," I replied, hoping she'd be pleased. She glanced at the clock. "Must be nice." The comment was light, casual, but it carried something beneath it. At dinner, she'd correct me unnecessarily. "That's not how it happened," she said once in front of the kids. "You always exaggerate." I laughed it off, embarrassed. "Okay." She smiled then, but it wasn't warm. It felt like a win. I didn't recognize it for what it was: anger that had gone quiet, blame that had found a target. Our daughter, Mia, was home from college then, old enough to notice changes, young enough to misinterpret them. Laura gravitated toward her, pulling her into long conversations that stopped when I entered the room. One afternoon, I overheard Laura say, "You don't owe anyone your unhappiness." Mia's voice followed, earnest. "You've sacrificed enough, Mom." I paused in the hallway, unseen. Later, I asked Mia how she was settling back in. "She's finally doing things for herself," she said carefully. "I think that's good." "For herself," I repeated. Mia nodded. "You've been really busy for a long time, Dad." It wasn't an accusation, but it wasn't neutral either. I didn't realize my own daughter was helping cover lies under my roof, rerouting conversations, normalizing late nights, framing secrecy as self-care. In her mind, she was protecting her mother, standing up for happiness. She didn't see deception. She saw justification. Jake did, though. My son watched more than he spoke. He noticed how Laura stopped sitting next to me, how she flinched when I touched her arm, how her tone hardened when she spoke to me, then softened instantly when she spoke to others. One night, as we ate dinner without her again, he pushed his food aside. "She doesn't like you anymore," he said quietly. The bluntness caught me off guard. "That's not true." He shrugged. "She talks to you like you're in the way." I forced a smile. "You're reading into things." He didn't argue. He just nodded, unconvinced. After that, he stayed closer to me, sat in my office while I worked, asked to help with errands, lingered in the same room like proximity itself was protection. He didn't accuse, he didn't confront, he just watched, like he was bracing for something neither of us wanted to name. I should have listened to that instinct. But I was still clinging to the idea that love, once built, didn't rot quietly, that resentment announced itself loudly, that betrayal looked dramatic. I didn't understand yet how hatred can grow silently, fed by loneliness, watered by justification, and hidden behind a smile I no longer recognized. The divorce papers arrived without warning. No argument. No raised voices, no last attempt to salvage anything. Just an envelope sitting on the kitchen counter, perfectly aligned with the edge like it belonged there, like it had always been part of the decor. A business proposal I hadn't asked for, waiting patiently for my signature. I stared at it longer than I should have. Laura was in the living room when I picked it up, scrolling on her phone with an ease that told me this moment wasn't new to her. She'd already lived it, rehearsed it, closed the emotional account. "Is this what I think it is?" I asked. She didn't look surprised, didn't look nervous. "Yes," she said simply. "I didn't want to drag things out." "Drag what out?" I asked. "This is the first time I'm hearing we're done." She finally looked up then, studying me the way you assess a situation you've already decided to leave. "We've been misaligned for a long time, David." "Misaligned," I repeated. "That's the word you're going with?" She sighed softly, not in frustration, more like patience. "I've grown. I'm not the same person I was when we started this, and neither are you." "I'm still married to you." She nodded. "Legally, but emotionally, we've been in different phases for years." Years. That word landed heavier than the papers in my hand. "Did you ever think to talk to me about this, before hiring an attorney?" "I didn't think talking would change anything," she replied. "I've already done the work. I've already made peace with it." Peace. She said it like it was something she'd earned. "I need alignment. I need to feel seen. I can't keep shrinking myself while you're chasing the next milestone." I looked at her then, really looked. Calm, composed, already gone. That's when I knew she hadn't just decided to leave. She'd been leaving in increments, quietly, carefully, long before she ever told me. What she didn't know was that I'd already noticed the cracks. Not because I was suspicious, but because patterns don't lie. The late nights that didn't line up with project deadlines, the calendar entries that changed names, the dinners charged to cards I didn't recognize, the way her phone never left her hand and always turned face down when I entered the room, the way she stepped outside to take calls, the way she smiled at messages, then went blank when she looked at me. I hadn't confronted her. I hadn't accused her. I'd paid attention. Months earlier, I'd started reviewing our finances more closely. Nothing dramatic, just awareness. I'd synced statements, archived emails, taken screenshots I hoped I'd never need. I told myself it was prudence, contingency planning. The truth was simpler. Somewhere deep down, I already knew she was too far gone to be reached by conversation alone. "You're taking this very calmly," she said later that evening as I set the papers back on the counter. "So are you," I replied. She gave a small smile. "I've had time." I nodded. "I can tell." She didn't ask what I meant by that. I had prepared, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because I finally understood something I should have learned earlier. Love doesn't excuse blindness, and trust doesn't mean neglecting reality. I wasn't scrambling now. I wasn't reacting. I'd already accepted what she was only just making official. Quietly, methodically. And while she believed this was the beginning of her freedom, I knew it was simply the moment our separate consequences started catching up to us both. When the truth surfaced in court, it felt unreal, like watching someone else's life projected onto a screen I couldn't look away from. The courtroom was quiet in that sterile way institutions are. No emotion, no sympathy, just wood benches, neutral faces, and a judge who cared only about facts and documentation. My attorney stood first. "We'd like to enter Exhibit C into evidence." A monitor flickered on. Text messages appeared, dates, times, names. Laura didn't look at the screen at first. She stared straight ahead, chin lifted, posture rigid, confident, until the messages began to be read aloud. "Can't wait to see you again. Same hotel." Once this is over, we won't have to sneak anymore. He owes you after all those years. Don't feel guilty." The air shifted. I felt it before I saw it. Mia's breath caught beside Laura. I turned just enough to see my daughter's face drain of color as realization set in. Not confusion, not disbelief, but recognition. She knew these words. She had heard versions of them before, wrapped in softer language: happiness, freedom, self-discovery. Now they sounded different when stripped of justification. Her eyes filled, then collapsed inward, like something breaking behind them. Jake sat beside me, shoulders squared, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitch. He didn't look at Laura, didn't look at Mia. He stared forward, hands folded, as if anchoring himself to the chair. The judge leaned forward. "Counsel, continue." My lawyer didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He laid out timelines, hotel receipts, credit card statements, travel overlaps. Nights Laura claimed to be working late that coincided perfectly with reservations under another man's name. A real estate developer in town, married once, divorced now, comfortable, confident, patient, very patient. This relationship, my lawyer said, did not begin after the filing for divorce. It was ongoing for over a year prior. Laura finally turned to him. "That's not—" "Ms. Reynolds," the judge said sharply, "you'll have a chance to speak." The messages continued. Plans, expectations. "Once I get my settlement, we're free. He won't fight it. He never does. I deserve this after everything I put up with." That was when I felt it. Not anger, not even sadness, something colder. She hadn't just wanted out. She wanted me dismantled. My attorney introduced the private investigator's report next. Photographs slid onto the screen. Laura and the developer entering hotels together, leaving together, laughing, comfortable, familiar. This report also documents conversations between Ms. Reynolds and her partner discussing post-divorce financial expectations, specifically their intent to secure a settlement large enough to eliminate Mr. Reynolds' financial stability. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Laura's attorney shifted uncomfortably. I looked at her then, really looked. Her confidence was gone. Her shoulders sagged slightly, as if the weight of her own planning had finally landed on her. She glanced toward Mia instinctively, searching for support. Mia couldn't meet her eyes. "You told me it was just about being happy," Mia whispered, barely audible, but loud enough in the silence. "You said you weren't trying to hurt Dad." Laura's lips parted, closed again. The developer's name came up again, his income, his messages, his willingness to wait it out while Laura handled the divorce. "You didn't just seek dissolution, you sought advantage," the judge said. Laura's attorney objected weakly. It didn't land. Years of bitterness had built something sharp inside her. Resentment hardened into entitlement. She believed I owed her everything I'd built as compensation for years she felt overlooked. She didn't want fairness. She wanted punishment. And she hadn't acted alone. That realization hit Mia hardest. "I knew about him," she said suddenly, her voice shaking. I thought it was just emotional support. She said Dad didn't love her anymore." The judge looked at her gently. "Thank you for your honesty." Laura's head dropped then, not in shame, but in defeat. I sat there, still, listening to the collapse of a narrative I hadn't even known existed. I didn't recognize the woman being described, not because the evidence was wrong, but because I hadn't believed she was capable of that kind of cruelty. I leaned toward Jake slightly. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He shook his head once. "You didn't do this." The ruling came later, brief, decisive. Minimal settlement, no punitive award. No financial devastation. Laura didn't look at me when we stood. She didn't look at the kids. She looked hollow. As we walked out, Mia lagged behind, tears streaming freely now. "I didn't know," she said to me, breaking. "I swear I didn't know it was like that." "I know," I said quietly, and I meant it. The settlement she expected evaporated before her eyes. In the weeks that followed the ruling, Laura tried to keep her composure, tried to negotiate around what was already decided. Her attorney called mine more than once. "She's willing to be flexible," he said carefully. "If your client is." My lawyer glanced at me. "My client is done being flexible." When Laura finally spoke to me directly, her voice was different, thinner, stripped of certainty. "This isn't what we discussed," she said over the phone. "I thought, after everything." "After everything?" I repeated quietly. "You still thought I'd fund the rest of your life." She went silent. "I gave you years," she said finally. "I stood by you while you built your career." "And I gave you honesty, even when you didn't return it." "That's not fair." "No, what you planned wasn't fair. This is just reality catching up." She hung up without saying goodbye. The life she had mapped out, the one cushioned by my income and softened by someone else's arms, collapsed under its own weight. The developer disappeared once the money wasn't guaranteed. Her apartment downsized quickly. Friends who had cheered her bravery stopped answering calls when the story became inconvenient. I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved. Relief that I didn't have to monitor accounts anymore. Relief that I didn't have to wonder what version of the truth I was getting. Relief that the exhausting work of pretending not to see, not to feel, not to know, was finally over. A month later, I packed my car and left Seattle. Not dramatically, not angrily. I didn't slam doors or burn bridges. I just left. Jake helped me load boxes. He didn't ask why I chose the town I did, just nodded when I told him it was near the water. "Seems like a good place to breathe," he said. Mia hugged me longer than usual. "I wish I'd seen it sooner," she whispered. "I know. What matters is you see it now." I moved 3 states away, to a coastal town where no one cared about my resume or the size of my office, where people asked what I liked to do, not what I did for a living. I took a smaller job, fewer hours, fewer emails, fewer expectations. The first week, I kept reaching for my phone out of habit. There was nothing urgent waiting for me, no fires to put out, no one measuring my worth by my availability. For the first time in years, my evenings belonged to me. I cooked simple meals, walked along the shoreline at dusk, sat on my porch listening to the tide roll in and roll out, learning how to sit with silence without trying to fill it. It was uncomfortable at first. Then it became peaceful. I reconnected with my kids, honestly this time, not as the distracted provider or the apologetic presence, but as a father who listened. Mia called one night, her voice shaky. "I'm really sorry, Dad, for believing her, for helping her hide things. I know you thought you were protecting someone you loved. That doesn't make you a villain." She cried quietly. "I just don't want to lose you." "You won't," I told her. "Not anymore." Jake didn't apologize. He didn't need to. When he visited that summer, he stood on the porch with me, hands in his pockets, watching the sun dip into the water. "This place suits you," he said. I smiled. "It does." He nodded once. That was enough. I didn't rebuild my life all at once. I still had some regret from all the times I wasn't there, all the times I was too busy. It's not that I didn't care, I just wanted to ensure financial stability for my family, but it resulted in a huge price paid by all of us. I rebuilt my life carefully, intentionally, without the noise. Some people lose everything and call it tragedy. Others lose the illusion and call it freedom. I lost a marriage that had already ended long before the paperwork arrived. What I gained was something quieter, sturdier, and finally my own. Thanks for listening to our story. It's wonderful to have you here. Please like and subscribe to have more content come your way, and do check out the other stories from our channel.